You were always too weak to stand beside me. The words hang in the luxury-scented air of the Cartier boutique as Lee Min-suk's body crashes against unforgiving marble. His hand flies instinctively to his swollen belly. 6 months pregnant, vulnerable, every protective instinct screaming. Gasps ripple through the crowd of shoppers frozen in horror. Security guards stand paralyzed, recognizing the attacker's face. Kang Tae-jun looms over him, expensive suit pristine. New fiancé Park Soo-jin smirking at his side. The alpha who once whispered promises of forever now radiates nothing but contempt. This is power, old money, generational wealth, the kind that has always crushed Omegas underfoot without consequence. But then, the sound of shattering glass. The mall's entrance explodes with the arrival of a fleet of black Mercedes vehicles. The temperature drops. Conversations die mid-sentence. Out steps Jean Woo-bin, tall, lethal, immaculate in a tailored black suit, followed by an army of men who move like synchronized shadows of death. The air shifts. True power has entered the building. And Kang Tae-jun, the alpha who thought himself untouchable, realizes with dawning horror that he's just laid hands on the most protected Omega in Seoul. He's just signed his own death warrant. This is the story of how rock bottom became the foundation, and how the most feared man in Korea became one Omega's salvation. Before I tell you what happens next, subscribe to Starry-Eyed Lovers, and tell me where you're watching from. The silence that followed Jean Woo-bin's arrival was the kind that pressed against eardrums. It wasn't peaceful. It was the held breath before an execution, the moment predators calculate which prey to strike first. Min-suk remained on the cold marble floor, one hand still protectively cradling his belly, the other braced against the ground as if the world might tilt again at any moment. Woo-bin moved through the shattered glass entrance with the unhurried grace of someone who had never needed to rush toward anything in his life. Everything came to him. Everything bent. The 15 men flanking him wore identical black suits, earpieces, and expressions carved from stone. They spread through the boutique like ink through water, silent, absolute, inescapable. Min-suk. Woo-bin's voice cut through the frozen air, low and controlled, but Min-suk heard what others wouldn't. The tremor of barely restrained fury underneath. Are you hurt? Min-suk tried to stand, failed, his legs shaking too violently. I'm the baby, I don't know. Woo-bin was beside him in 3 strides, kneeling without regard for his immaculate Brioni suit against the dusty floor. His hands that had broken men, signed death warrants, commanded an empire built on fear, touched Min-suk's face with devastating gentleness. Look at me. Breathe with me. In. Out. Min-suk's panicked gasps gradually steadied as he focused on Woo-bin's dark eyes, on the familiar scent of his cologne mixing with something sharper. Danger. The baby? Woo-bin asked, his thumb brushing away a tear Min-suk hadn't realized had fallen. She's moving. I can feel her. Good. Woo-bin's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. We're leaving. Dr. Choi is already en route to the house. Behind them, Tae-jun finally found his voice, though it emerged strangled. Wait, that's Jean Woo-bin. Park Soo-jin, who moments ago had been laughing at Min-suk's expense, went pale. The Jean Woo-bin? No, that's impossible. But Tae-jun's eyes had locked onto where Woo-bin's hand rested protectively on Min-suk's swollen belly, possessive and territorial in a way that transcended typical concern. Understanding dawned with the cold brutality of frostbite. What is he to you? Tae-jun's question came out barely above a whisper, directed at Min-suk, but his gaze never leaving Woo-bin. Woo-bin stood in one fluid motion, bringing Min-suk up with him, cradling him against his chest as if he weighed nothing. When he finally turned to acknowledge Tae-jun's existence, his expression was arctic. I don't owe you explanations, but since you've inserted yourself into my evening. He paused, and somehow the silence was more menacing than any threat. Min-suk is my husband. The child he's carrying is my daughter. And you just put your hands on them. The temperature in the boutique seemed to drop 10 degrees. Tae-jun took an involuntary step backward, his expensive loafers squeaking against marble. I didn't know. Does ignorance unbreak bones? Woo-bin's voice remained conversational, which made it infinitely more terrifying. Does it erase bruises? Does it calm the heartbeat of a pregnant man who's already lost one child to cruelty? Min-suk felt Woo-bin's arms tighten fractionally around him, protective rather than constraining. He buried his face against Woo-bin's shoulder, suddenly exhausted, the adrenaline crash hitting him like a physical blow. Around them, shoppers remained frozen, some with phones raised but too terrified to actually record. Security guards hovered uselessly at the perimeter, caught between duty and survival instinct. Hyung, one of Woo-bin's men, materialized beside them, a sharp-featured man Min-suk recognized as Kang Dae-young, Woo Bin's second-in-command. "Car's ready. West exit is clear." Woo Bin nodded once. To Min-suk, his voice softened to something approaching tenderness. "Close your eyes. I'm taking you home." Min-suk didn't argue, just pressed closer and let himself be carried, trusting in the steady rhythm of Woo Bin's heartbeat, in arms that had never let him fall. The world blurred past, shocked faces, luxury goods forgotten, the click of expensive shoes as Woo Bin's men formed a protective corridor toward the exit. Behind them, Dae-young remained, his pleasant smile utterly at odds with the ice in his eyes as he approached Tae-jun and Soo-jin. The couple stood frozen, Soo-jin's hand clutching Tae-jun's arm hard enough to leave marks. "Listen very carefully," Dae-young said, his tone almost friendly, "because I'm only going to explain this once, and I have a feeling you're not particularly intelligent." He straightened his cufflinks with deliberate casualness. "You just touched something that doesn't belong to you. You put your hands, violently, on Jean Woo Bin's Omega. His pregnant Omega. The man who carries his child. It was a misunderstanding," Tae-jun started. "Oh, I don't think it was." Dae-young's smile sharpened. "You knew exactly who Lee Min-suk was. You knew he was carrying a child. You chose violence anyway. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a choice. And choices." He leaned in, voice dropping to something that rasped like a blade being unsheathed. "Have consequences." Soo-jin made a small sound, halfway between a whimper and a sob. "Go home," Dae-young continued, stepping back with that same pleasant expression. "Kiss your families. Sleep in your comfortable beds. Eat breakfast tomorrow. Live your normal lives. And every single morning when you wake up, remember, Jean Woo Bin doesn't forget. He doesn't forgive. He simply waits. And decides. So ask yourself." He tilted his head, considering them like specimens under glass. "What would justice look like? For a man who threw away an Omega like trash, only to discover that Omega is now the most protected person in Seoul." Tae-jun's face had gone from pale to gray. "That's what I thought." Dae-young buttoned his suit jacket, all business again. "Enjoy your uncertainty. I know we will." He turned and walked away, footsteps echoing with measured precision, leaving Tae-jun and Soo-jin standing among broken glass and shattered assumptions, finally understanding that old money meant nothing compared to the currency of fear. Outside, Min-suk was already secured in the back of the lead Mercedes, Woo Bin beside him, one hand never leaving his, the motorcade pulling away from the mall with the silent efficiency of a military operation. "He called you his husband," Min-suk whispered, still processing, voice hoarse. "You are my husband. In front of everyone. You never. We always kept it quiet." Woo Bin's thumb traced circles on Min-suk's palm. "I was protecting you from my world. Turns out your world is just as dangerous. So now everyone knows. Let them know. Let them understand what happens when anyone threatens what's mine." Min-suk's breath hitched, part relief, part something he couldn't name. "What are you going to do to him?" "Nothing yet." Woo Bin's expression in the passing streetlights was contemplative, dark. "I'm going to find out who Kang Tae-jun really is. What he's done. Where he's weak. And then..." He pressed a kiss to Min-suk's temple, impossibly gentle. "Then I'm going to take everything from him. Slowly. The way he took everything from you. Woo Bin. Sure, rest now. Dr. Choi will examine you when we get home. Our daughter needs you calm." Min-suk closed his eyes, letting the car's gentle motion and Woo Bin's steady presence lull him towards something like peace. Behind them, Seoul's glittering skyline receded, unaware that in one luxury mall, power had shifted irrevocably, and a reckoning had begun. 9 months earlier, the Kang family mansion sprawled across 3 acres of prime Seoul real estate, all marble columns and imported chandeliers, the kind of wealth that announced itself in whispers rather than shouts. Min-suk had been to this house exactly 4 times in the 6 months he'd been with Tae-jun, always through the service entrance, always when the family was supposedly away. He should have recognized the pattern for what it was, shame. But tonight, he'd come through the front door. 3 months pregnant and terrified, clutching the positive pregnancy test like a talisman, he'd needed to tell someone. Tae-jun had been avoiding his calls for a week. So Min-suk had done the unthinkable. He'd showed up unannounced. Mrs. Kang stood in the drawing room, backlit by a fireplace that probably cost more than Min-suk's childhood home. She was elegant in the way that old money always was, her pearl necklace catching light like small moons, her silk blouse the color of cream. But her eyes were obsidian chips. "Let me make certain I understand," she said, voice clipped and precise as a surgeon's scalpel. "You're carrying my son's child." "Yes." Min-suk's hands twisted together over his still flat stomach. I know the timing isn't ideal, but Ideal. Mrs. Kong laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You think timing is the issue here? She moved closer, and Min-suk caught the scent of her perfume. Expensive, suffocating. Do you have any idea what you are to this family? What you represent? I love Taejun. Love. She spat the word like poison. You're an omega with no family name, no connections, no education worth mentioning. You work at a coffee shop, for God's sake. And you thought what? That spreading your legs would elevate you into our world. Her lips curved into something that might have been a smile on a kinder face. You're a social climber. A leech. And that thing inside you is an anchor you're trying to tie around my son's neck. Min-suk felt each word land like a physical blow. It's not, he wanted. What Taejun wants and what Taejun gets are two different things. He's 24 years old, Min-suk. He has responsibilities to this family, to the company. His marriage has already been arranged with the Park family. Your little accident doesn't change decades of planning. Mrs. Kong moved to a side table, poured herself whiskey from a crystal decanter with steady hands. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave. Tonight. You'll never contact my son again. And that pregnancy. She took a sip, considered. Handle it. Discreetly. I'll wire you money. I'm not getting rid of my baby. Then you're a fool. Mrs. Kong set down her glass with a sharp click. Did you think I'd let some Omega barista trap my son with a pregnancy? That I'd welcome you into this family? Her voice dropped to something colder than Min-suk had ever heard. You don't belong here. You never did. And the sooner you accept that, the less this has to hurt. Where's Taejun? Let me talk to him. Taejun knows you're here. He's upstairs. And he's not coming down. The words landed with brutal finality. He made his choice, Min-suk. It wasn't you. Min-suk felt something crack inside his chest, hairline fractures spreading through the careful hope he'd built. You're lying. Am I? Mrs. Kong gestured toward the drawing room window. Through it, Min-suk could see the second floor, see Taejun's silhouette in his bedroom window, phone pressed to his ear, deliberately not looking down. He could stop this right now. One word from him, and I'd have to reconsider. But look at him, Min-suk. Really look. He's not coming. The truth of it hit harder than any physical violence could have. Taejun was right there, 30 feet away, and he was choosing silence. Get out of my house. Please. Security. Mrs. Kang's voice carried, sharp and commanding. Two uniformed men appeared in the doorway within seconds, clearly expecting this. Escort this Omega off the property. If he returns, call the police. Wait, please, it's snowing, I don't have. Min-suk's protests dissolved into nothing as hands gripped his arms, professional but firm, propelling him toward the door. He tried to dig in his heels, to turn back, to make someone see him as human rather than problem to be disposed of. Taejun. Taejun, please. The front door opened onto a winter night that had turned vicious. What had been light flurries when Min-suk arrived was now a full storm, wind driving ice-laced rain sideways. His thin jacket, the nicest one he owned, worn to make a good impression, offered no protection. My phone, I left my phone inside. The door slammed shut. The locks clicked with mechanical finality. Min-suk stood on the marble steps, rain already soaking through to his skin, and understood that this was what disposable felt like. This was what it meant to be nothing in someone else's story. He started walking. The Kong estate was in Songbuk-dong, all winding roads and luxury homes hidden behind high walls. No buses ran this route. No taxis cruised looking for fares. It was a neighborhood designed to keep people like Min-suk out, and now it became a maze trapping him in. The cramping started 10 minutes into his walk. At first, just twinges. Uncomfortable but manageable. Min-suk pressed his hand to his stomach, kept moving, focused on getting to the main road where he might find help. But the cramps intensified, evolving from discomfort to pain that bent him double, gasping. The cold rain seemed to seep into his bones, making everything hurt worse. No. No, please no. Warmth between his legs. In the rain and dark, Min-suk couldn't see if it was blood, but he knew. He knew the way drowning people know when water fills their lungs. This was catastrophe, this was loss, this was everything ending. He stumbled forward, vision blurring from pain and tears and rain. The road stretched endlessly ahead, no lights, no cars, just darkness and ice and the sound of his own ragged breathing. Each step felt like walking through deep water, his body fighting him, trying to shut down. The headlights appeared like twin moons through the storm. Min-suk registered them distantly, a car, salvation, and tried to move to the side of the road. But his legs gave out, body finally surrendering to shock and pain and cold. He went down hard, the asphalt unforgiving, and dimly heard tires screech, smelled burning rubber. The black Mercedes stopped inches from where he lay. A door opened. Footsteps approached, rapid but controlled. Then hands, warm, steady, turned him over carefully. Jesus. Can you hear me? Sir, can you speak? Minsuk forced his eyes open. Through rain and tears, he saw a man backlit by headlights. Features mostly shadow except for dark eyes that reflected concern rather than the disgust he'd grown accustomed to tonight. Pregnant, Minsuk managed through chattering teeth. I'm pregnant. I think I'm losing. The man's expression shifted, hardened with decision. I'm getting you to a hospital. Can you move? It hurts. I know. I've got you. Strong arms slid under Minsuk, lifting him with surprising gentleness. Stay with me. What's your name? Minsuk. Lee Minsuk. I'm Wu Bin. The name would mean nothing to Minsuk until later, until he understood who he'd collapsed in front of, what power had stopped for him when his own lover wouldn't. You're going to be all right, Minsuk. I promise you that. Minsuk wanted to believe him, wanted to trust the certainty in that voice. But as darkness crept in at the edges of his vision, as he felt Wu Bin's car roar to life and speed through the storm, all he could think was, I'm losing everything. I'm losing my baby. I'm losing myself. He didn't yet know that sometimes you have to lose everything before you can be found. Wu Bin's private medical facility didn't look like a hospital. No fluorescent lights, no sterile white walls, no smell of disinfectant covering decay. It was a converted hanok in Buckshin, all dark wood and soft lighting, traditional architecture, hiding state-of-the-art medical equipment. The kind of place where powerful men came when they needed treatment without questions, where wounds from knife fights and gunshots were stitched up alongside legitimate ailments. Minsuk woke to rice paper screens filtering dawn light, to the steady beep of monitors, to the absence of pain that meant they'd given him something strong. For a moment, one blessed, ignorant moment, he forgot why he was here. Then memory crashed back like a tidal wave. Dr. Choi sat beside the bed, a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and the kind of face that had seen every type of human suffering and chosen compassion anyway. Behind her, Wu Bin stood by the window, still wearing his rain-soaked suit from the night before, looking like he hadn't moved since bringing Minsuk in. Mr. Lee, Dr. Choi said gently, and Minsuk knew from her tone alone. Knew before she said the words. I'm so very sorry. We did everything we could, but the hemorrhaging was too severe. The fetus didn't survive. The world tilted. Minsuk heard a sound, raw animal, and distantly realized it was coming from his own throat. His hands flew to his stomach, now empty, now hollow, now nothing but a reminder of what he'd lost. No, you're wrong. Check again. Please check again. Minsuk, Dr. Choi reached for his hand, but he pulled away, curling into himself like something wounded trying to protect organs that were already destroyed. I felt them moving. Yesterday morning. His voice cracked, shattered. They were there. My baby was there. I know. Dr. Choi's own eyes were damp. The trauma from the exposure, the stress, the physical exertion in your condition. Your body went into premature labor. At 12 weeks, there was nothing we could do. 12 weeks. 3 months. Just barely past the point where he'd allowed himself to hope, to imagine, to start thinking of himself as someone's parent. And now, it's my fault. The words tore out of him. I went there. I walked in that storm. I didn't fight hard enough when they... No. Wu Bin's voice cut through Minsuk's spiral, sharp and absolute. He moved from the window to the bedside in 2 strides, and when he spoke again, his tone was gentler but no less firm. This is not your fault. Do you understand me? None of this is your fault. Minsuk looked up at him through tears, at this stranger who'd saved him, who had no reason to care, who was still here when everyone else had abandoned him. You don't know what I did. What I know you loved your child. I know you tried to protect them. I know that the people who should have protected you both chose cruelty instead. Wu Bin crouched beside the bed, bringing himself to Minsuk's eye level. What happened to you was violence. What happened to your baby was murder. Just because no one held a weapon doesn't make it less true. The words unlocked something in Minsuk's chest, and he broke completely. Sobs racked his body, grief pouring out in waves that felt like they'd drown him. Dr. Choi quietly excused herself, giving them privacy, and Wu Bin, this dangerous man, this stranger, simply stayed. He didn't try to fix it or minimize it or rush Minsuk through his pain. He just sat on the edge of the bed and let Minsuk collapse against him. Let him soak the shoulder of his expensive suit with tears and snot and anguish. I have nothing now, Minsuk whispered when he could finally form words again. No family. No job. I can't go back there. No home. No baby. I have nothing. You have yourself. Wu Bin's hand moved to Minsuk's hair, a touch so careful it made Minsuk want to weep all over again. That's not nothing. It feels like nothing. I know. A pause waited. Min-suk, look at me. When Min-suk raised his head, Woo Bin's dark eyes held something Min-suk couldn't quite name. Determination, maybe, or promise. You will never be thrown away again. Do you hear me? Never. Not while I'm alive. You don't even know me. No. A ghost of a smile touched Woo Bin's lips. But I'd like to. The recovery should have taken days. It took weeks. Not because of physical complications, Dr. Choi was too skilled for that, but because grief had its own timeline, its own demands. Woo Bin moved Min-suk to one of his properties after 3 days in the medical facility. A penthouse apartment in Hanam-dong with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Han River. The guest room was larger than Min-suk's entire previous apartment had been. This is too much, Min-suk protested weakly when Woo Bin showed him the space. It's temporary, until you decide what comes next. Woo Bin set Min-suk's small bag, the few possessions Dr. Choi's staff had purchased for him since he'd arrived with nothing, on the bed. There's no timeline, no expectations. Just heal. But that proved impossible when Woo Bin refused to leave him to it. Every morning, breakfast appeared, not from staff but made by Woo Bin's own hands. Simple things. Rice porridge with ginger when Min-suk's stomach couldn't handle more, kimchi jjigae when he needed something that tasted like comfort, sweet red bean pastries when he needed gentleness. Woo Bin never asked if he'd eaten. He just made food and sat across from Min-suk in the dining room with morning light painting everything gold, and they'd eat in companionable silence. You don't have to do this, Min-suk said one morning 2 weeks in. Take care of me. You saved my life. You don't owe me anything more. Woo Bin looked up from his coffee, expression unreadable. What if I'm not doing it because I owe you? What if I'm doing it because I want to? Why would you want to? Because you deserved better than what happened to you. Because when I look at you, I don't see someone broken. I see someone who survived. He paused, considering his words. And because I'm selfish enough to want you to stay. Min-suk's breath caught. Woo Bin. No pressure. No demands. I'm just being honest. The thing was Woo Bin never pushed. Never demanded. When Min-suk had nightmares and woke screaming, Woo Bin appeared in his doorway within seconds. Just checking you're all right. And left when Min-suk said he was fine even though they both knew he wasn't. When Min-suk spent entire days crying, Woo Bin brought him tissues and water and sat in the living room reading contracts so Min-suk wouldn't be alone but wouldn't feel watched. When Min-suk finally asked what Woo Bin did for a living, Woo Bin answered with brutal honesty. I run an organization that operates outside the law. Some people call me a criminal. Others call me necessary. I've killed people, Min-suk. I've hurt people. I'm not a good man by most definitions. Min-suk absorbed this, surprisingly calm. Have you killed people who didn't deserve it? That's a complicated question. Try me. Woo Bin studied him for a long moment. No. Everyone I've killed was either trying to kill me first or hurt people under my protection. I don't involve civilians. I don't traffic in drugs or people. I run gambling, protection, information. I'm a monster, but I have rules. Then you're more honorable than most good men I've known. Something shifted between them after that conversation. An understanding, maybe. Or recognition. Two people who'd been judged by the world and found wanting, finding something like acceptance in each other. The touches started small. Woo Bin's hand steadying Min-suk's elbow when he swayed getting up too fast. Min-suk's fingers brushing Woo Bin's when they both reached for the same book. Sitting closer on the couch during movies until their shoulders touched, until Min-suk's head tipped sideways onto Woo Bin's shoulder and neither of them moved away. Is this okay? Min-suk whispered one evening, 6 weeks after that terrible night. This is perfect, Woo Bin answered and meant it. The first kiss happened in the kitchen at midnight. Min-suk couldn't sleep, came out for water, found Woo Bin already there making tea. They collided in the darkness, apologies turning to laughter, turning to silence, turning to Woo Bin's hand cupping Min-suk's face like he was something precious. Tell me to stop, Woo Bin breathed. Don't stop. The kiss was gentle, questioning, nothing like the demanding claiming Min-suk had experienced with Tae-jun. This was Woo Bin asking permission with every brush of lips, and Min-suk answering yes, yes, please yes. I'm not ready for. Min-suk started when they finally broke apart. I know. We have time. We have all the time you need. They did have time. Weeks turned to months. Min-suk started leaving the apartment, first just to the building's gym, then to nearby cafes, finally to job interviews. Woo Bin never asked where he went or when he'd be back. Just, text me if you need anything. Just, I'm proud of you. Just, welcome home when Min-suk returned. 3 months after that night in the storm, Min-suk woke up nauseous. At first, he dismissed it as food poisoning, then as stress. But when it continued for a week, when his scent shifted subtly, when his body started displaying familiar signs, Dr. Choi confirmed what Min-suk had been too terrified to hope for. You're pregnant. About 6 weeks. Min-suk sat in Woo Bin's home office that evening, watching the sun set over the Han River, trying to find words that didn't exist. Woo Bin was at his desk reviewing documents, reading glasses perched on his nose in a way that made him look almost soft. I need to tell you something, Min-suk finally said. Woo Bin immediately set down his pen, gave Min-suk his full attention. Okay, I'm pregnant. It's yours. I know we haven't. I know this is fast, and you didn't sign up for. Min-suk. Woo Bin was out of his chair and across the room before Min-suk could finish spiraling. He took Min-suk's hands, held them between his own. Breathe. I'm going to ask you one question, and I want you to answer honestly, not what you think I want to hear. Do you want this baby? Min-suk's eyes filled. So much. But I'm scared. After what happened, you'll have Dr. Choi's complete attention. The best prenatal care available. You'll never walk in a storm alone again. You'll never be unprotected. Woo Bin pressed Min-suk's hands to his own chest, over his heart. And you'll never be unloved. Not you, not this child. I promise you that. Woo Bin, you don't have to. Marry me. Min-suk's breath stopped. What? Marry me. Not because of the baby. Not out of obligation. Marry me because I've spent 3 months falling in love with your strength, your resilience, your terrible taste in movies. Marry me because I want to wake up to you every morning and know you're safe. Marry me because, his voice cracked slightly, because you make me want to be the man you see when you look at me. Yes. The word escaped before Min-suk could overthink it. Yes, I'll marry you. They married 2 weeks later at a small temple, just Dr. Choi and Dae-young as witnesses. Min-suk wearing a simple hanbok that accommodated his early pregnancy. Woo Bin in traditional dress looking at Min-suk like he'd personally hung every star. When they bowed to each other, sealing their vows, Min-suk felt something slot into place, not completion, because he was learning he could be whole on his own, but connection. Partnership. Home. That night, lying in bed with Woo Bin's hand resting protectively over his stomach where their daughter grew, Min-suk understood. Sometimes the worst night of your life is just the doorway to the best one. Sometimes monsters are the ones who save you. And sometimes, when you're thrown away, you land exactly where you were meant to be all along. Before I tell you what happens next, subscribe to Starry-Eyed Lovers, and tell me where you're watching from. The private wing of Samsung Medical Center was quiet at 1 in the morning, the kind of quiet that money bought. No overhead announcements, no rushing nurses, no sick children crying 3 doors down. Woo Bin had made a single phone call from the car, and by the time they'd arrived, Dr. Choi was already waiting, a suite prepared, every possible piece of obstetric equipment standing ready. Min-suk lay on the examination table, paper crinkling beneath him, Woo Bin's hand clasped so tightly in his own that he worried about breaking bones. But Woo Bin never flinched, never pulled away, just stood at Min-suk's shoulder like a sentinel while Dr. Choi prepared the ultrasound equipment with practiced efficiency. The fall wasn't from a significant height, Dr. Choi said, her voice calm in that particular way medical professionals deployed during crises. And you said you felt movement in the car? Yes. Min-suk's voice came out threadbare. She moved. Like she was annoyed. But what if? Let's see what we're working with before we catastrophize. Dr. Choi squeezed the gel onto Min-suk's exposed belly, now prominent at 6 months, and Min-suk flinched at the cold. Sorry. I know. Deep breath for me. The ultrasound wand pressed against his skin, and Min-suk stopped breathing entirely. The seconds stretched like taffy, like torture, like every terrible possibility arranging itself in his mind. Placental abruption, fetal distress, history repeating itself because some people were simply destined to lose everything they loved. Then the sound. That rapid whoosh 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 of a heartbeat, strong and steady and utterly indifferent to the drama surrounding it. Min-suk made a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob. There she is. Dr. Choi angled the screen so they could see, and there, impossibly small, impossibly resilient, was their daughter, curled up and apparently unbothered by the evening's violence. Heart rate is perfect. 148. Movement looks normal. Amniotic fluid levels are good. She moved the wand, checking different angles with methodical precision. No signs of placental separation. No bleeding. She's tucked in tight and perfectly safe. You're sure? Min-suk whispered. You're absolutely sure? As sure as I can be at this moment. I want you on bed rest for 48 hours as a precaution, and we'll do another scan in 3 days to confirm everything's stable. But Min-suk. Dr. Choi looked up from the screen, her expression gentle. Your daughter is fine. She's strong. Just like her parents. The relief hit like a physical blow, like every muscle in Minsuk's body had been clenched for hours and suddenly released all at once. His free hand covered his mouth, muffling the sobs that erupted before he could stop them, tears streaming hot and fast down his temples into his hair. Hey, hey. Wu Bin leaned down, pressing his forehead to Minsuk's. She's okay. Our Hannah is okay. I thought, when I hit the ground, I thought I'd lose her. Minsuk couldn't stop shaking, couldn't stop crying, 9 months of carefully controlled fear suddenly exploding now that there was space for it. Just like before. Just like. But you didn't. She's safe. You kept her safe. I should have been more careful. I shouldn't have gone to that mall. If I'd just stayed home. Minsuk, no. Wu Bin's voice sharpened with an edge that cut through Minsuk's spiral. You have every right to exist in public spaces. You have every right to shop for your daughter. What happened wasn't your fault. It was his. Only his. Dr. Choi quietly excused herself, dimming the lights on her way out, giving them the privacy they needed. The ultrasound screen still displayed their daughter's steady heartbeat, that rhythmic proof of life that Minsuk couldn't look away from. I was so scared, he whispered into the semi-darkness. When I felt myself falling, all I could think was, not again. Please, not again. I can't survive losing another child. Wu Bin carefully climbed onto the examination table beside Minsuk, ignoring the fact that it wasn't designed for 2 people, that his expensive suit would wrinkle, that this violated probably a dozen hospital protocols. He gathered Minsuk against his chest, one hand cradling the back of Minsuk's head, the other resting protectively over his belly. Listen to me. Wu Bin's voice was low, steady, the kind of certainty that Minsuk had learned to trust absolutely. You are not the same person you were 9 months ago. You're not alone. You're not unprotected. You're not going to lose her because I won't let that happen. Do you understand? You can't control everything. Watch me. There was something almost frightening in how seriously Wu Bin meant it. I've built an empire on controlling things, on making sure the people under my protection stay protected. And you, both of you, you're not just under my protection. You're my entire world. Minsuk pressed his face into Wu Bin's shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with something sharper. The residue of adrenaline, of rage held carefully in check. What are you going to do? To Kong Taejun? Wu Bin's hand moved in slow, soothing circles over Minsuk's back. Nothing tonight. Tonight is about you. Making sure you're okay. Making sure Hannah is okay. Everything else can wait until morning. But you are going to do something. It wasn't a question. Minsuk knew Wu Bin well enough now to recognize the particular quality of stillness that came over him when he was planning something. Not the absence of movement, but the presence of controlled violence waiting for direction. Yes, Wu Bin said simply. I'm going to make certain Kong Taejun understands what it means to destroy something precious. What it costs. What it takes from you. His voice dropped to something colder, harder. He threw you away once and thought that was the end of it. Thought there were no consequences. That you were disposable. I'm going to teach him differently. Wu Bin. Minsuk pulled back enough to see his husband's face. In the dim light, Wu Bin's features were all sharp angles and shadows, beautiful and dangerous in equal measure. I don't want you to hurt him just because he hurt me. I don't want revenge to define us. This isn't just revenge. Wu Bin's thumb traced Minsuk's cheekbone with devastating gentleness. This is justice. There's a difference. Revenge is hot, impulsive, emotional. Justice is cold and calculated and permanent. He paused, seeming to choose his next words carefully. When someone hurts you, they hurt me. When someone threatens our child, they threaten everything I've built my life around protecting. That can't go unanswered. What if he doesn't have anything to find? What if he's just? Everyone has something. Wu Bin's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. I've been in this business for 15 years, Minsuk. I've learned that people with that kind of arrogance, that kind of casual cruelty, they always have secrets. Skeletons. Things they've done and gotten away with because money and status protected them. My job is to find those things and drag them into daylight. Minsuk searched Wu Bin's face, looking for something, hesitation maybe or doubt. But there was only certainty and something that looked almost like righteousness. This was who Wu Bin was, a man who protected what was his with absolute ruthlessness, who believed in a code even if it operated outside the law. Promise me something, Minsuk said finally. Anything. Promise me this won't consume you. That you won't become someone I don't recognize in pursuit of this. That when it's done, however it ends, you'll come back to me and Hannah. That you'll still be you. Something softened in Wu Bin's expression. That particular gentleness he reserved only for Minsuk. I promise. You're my center, Minsuk. You and Hannah. Everything else orbits around that. I won't lose myself because I have you to come home to. He sealed the promise with a kiss, soft and lingering, tasting like salt from Minsuk's tears and something else, commitment, maybe, or devotion. When they broke apart, Wu Bin rested his hand over Minsuk's belly again, and their daughter gave a strong kick, as if reminding them she was still there, still fighting, still worth protecting. Did you feel that? Minsuk asked, a watery laugh escaping. She's got your fighting spirit. Wu Bin's voice held a note of pride. Already telling us she's fine, stop worrying, she's got this handled. She gets that from both of us, I think. Maybe. Wu Bin helped Minsuk sit up as Dr. Choi knocked softly before re-entering. But mostly from you. You survived what should have broken you. You rebuilt yourself. You learned to trust again. That's not genetics, Minsuk. That's pure strength. Dr. Choi cleared her throat diplomatically. I'm going to get Minsuk admitted for overnight observation. Standard precaution. Wu Bin, visiting hours technically ended. I'm staying. Wu Bin's tone left no room for negotiation. Dr. Choi smiled slightly. I thought you might say that. I've had a cot brought to the room. Try to rest, both of you. Minsuk especially. Your body's been through trauma tonight, even if Hannah is fine. Sleep is the best medicine. But sleep didn't come easily. Even after they were transferred to a private room, after Minsuk was settled into a proper hospital bed with Wu Bin in a chair beside him refusing to use the cot, after the lights were dimmed and the hospital settled into its nighttime rhythm, Minsuk's mind wouldn't quiet. Wu Bin, he whispered into the darkness. I'm here. When you find out who Taejun really is, what he's done, will you tell me? Before you act. A pause, weighted with consideration. Yes, you have a right to know. And a right to decide how much you want to be involved in what comes next. This is your justice as much as mine. Okay. Minsuk reached out, found Wu Bin's hand in the dark, laced their fingers together. Then I trust you. Do what needs to be done. Wu Bin brought Minsuk's hand to his lips, pressed a kiss to his knuckles. Sleep now. In the morning, we start making Kong Taejun very, very sorry he ever touched what's mine. And in the quiet of that hospital room, with their daughter's heartbeat still echoing in Minsuk's memory and his husband's hand solid and real in his own, Minsuk finally let himself drift. Tomorrow would bring consequences. Tomorrow would bring justice. But tonight they were safe, they were together, and that was enough. Wu Bin's home office in the Hanamdong penthouse had been transformed into a war room within 12 hours of the mall incident. 3 of his best investigators, the kind who could find digital fingerprints in systems that claimed to be unhackable, had set up shop with laptops, tablets, and enough monitors to run a small intelligence agency. The curtains were drawn against the afternoon sun, the only light coming from screens displaying financial records, social media archives, traffic camera databases. Minsuk was upstairs resting under Dr. Choi's orders, which meant Wu Bin could focus entirely on the kind of work that required cold calculation rather than the warmth he reserved for his husband. Talk to me, Wu Bin said, settling into his chair with a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. What do we have on Kong Taejun? Park Ji-hoon, a former NIS analyst who'd found Wu Bin's organization more interesting than government work, pulled up a file on the main monitor. Surface level? He's exactly what he appears to be. 24 years old, only son of Kong Industries chairman Kong Dong-wook. Education at international schools, mediocre grades despite expensive tutoring. Currently works in the company's marketing division, a position that requires him to show up 3 days a week and not embarrass the family. Nothing interesting there. Wu Bin's fingers drummed against his desk. Dig deeper. Financial records. Where does his money go? Seo Min-ji, who specialized in financial forensics, took over. His credit card statements are illuminating. Regular purchases at high-end clubs in Gangnam, Club Lue, Octagon Arena. Large cash withdrawals every Friday night, typically 50 to 100,000 won. Payments to a Dr. Han Sang-woo at a private psychiatric clinic in Upgyujong. Drugs? Wu Bin asked. The cash withdrawals suggest it, but the clinic visits are interesting. Dr. Han specializes in addiction medicine and anxiety disorders. Our boy Taejun has been seeing him monthly for the past 3 years. Wu Bin filed that information away. Keep going. What about his social circle? Associates? Anyone who might talk. That's where it gets interesting. Ji-hoon pulled up a series of social media screenshots. 5 years ago, Taejun was running with a different crowd. More reckless. There are deleted Instagram posts, recovered from archives, showing him at illegal street races in Incheon. Photos of him with visible cocaine residue, though those were scrubbed within hours of posting. Someone in his family has been cleaning up his digital footprint methodically. But you found them anyway. Wu Bin smiled slightly. Good. What else? The third investigator, Choi Young-sik, spoke up for the first time. Young-sik specialized in legal records and cold cases, the kind of work that required patience and an encyclopedic knowledge of Korea's justice system. I ran a search through traffic incidents, accidents, anything involving the Kong family in the past decade. Most of it's minor, parking tickets that mysteriously disappeared, a DUI that never went to trial. But there's one case that caught my attention. He pulled up a news article on the screen. The headline read, "Single father sentenced to 20 years in fatal hit-and-run case." Wu Bin leaned forward, interested now. Tell me about this. 5 years ago, October 15th, a woman named Lee Hae-jin, 28 years old, was struck and killed by a vehicle in Songbukdong around 2:30 in the morning. She was walking home from her night shift at a convenience store. The driver fled the scene. Police arrested Kim Jae-hyun 3 days later, a 32-year-old man who worked construction, raising his daughter alone after his wife's death. They claimed his vehicle matched paint transfer evidence, that he had no alibi for that time frame. And you don't believe it, Wu Bin stated rather than asked. The case bothered me from the start. The evidence was almost too convenient. Paint transfer that perfectly matched, a witness who came forward claiming they saw Kim's truck leaving the scene. But that witness was later revealed to have gambling debts that mysteriously disappeared after the trial. The prosecution was handled by Yoon and Associates, one of the most expensive law firms in Seoul. They don't typically prosecute, they defend. But in this case, they were working directly with the prosecutor's office, providing consulting services. Minji cut in, pulling up financial records. And guess who Yoon and Associates' biggest client is? Kong Industries, Wu Bin said flatly. Bingo. The firm received a bonus payment of 200 million 3 weeks after Kim Jae-hyun's conviction, listed as consulting fees for special projects. The pieces were starting to arrange themselves into a picture Wu Bin had seen too many times before. Wealth protecting wealth, the innocent sacrifice to preserve reputation. But he needed proof, not speculation. Get me the traffic camera footage from that night. All of it. Every camera within a 5-kilometer radius of the accident site. Young-sik grimaced. That was 5 years ago. Most departments only keep footage for. I don't care about most departments. Find someone who archived it. Find someone who made backups. Find someone who might have saved it for insurance purposes. Wu Bin's voice hardened. I want that footage. It took 4 days. 4 days of calling in favors, of accessing systems that were supposed to be secure, of tracking down a retired traffic management employee who'd been paranoid enough to back up files to personal hard drives before they were scheduled for deletion. 4 days of Min-suk resting upstairs, occasionally appearing in the doorway of the office with worried eyes, and Wu Bin telling him, soon. I'm close. When Young-sik finally called Wu Bin at 3 in the morning on the 5th day, his voice was tight with barely controlled excitement. I've got it. You need to see this now. Wu Bin was in the office within minutes, Min-suk trailing behind despite Wu Bin's protests. You should be resting. I need to know. Min-suk settled onto the couch, wrapped in one of Wu Bin's shirts, stubborn and beautiful. If this is about Tae-jun, I have a right to see. Wu Bin couldn't argue with that. Young-sik had the footage queued up on the main monitor. Timestamp reading 2:27 a.m., October 15th, 5 years prior. The camera angle showed a curved residential street in Songbukdong, trees casting shadows under streetlights, everything quiet and still. Watch the top right corner, Young-sik said. At 2 hours 28 minutes and 14 seconds, a silver Mercedes appeared, moving fast. Too fast for the narrow residential street. The car weaved slightly, overcorrected, weaved again. Classic drunk driving pattern. Then, at 2 hours 28 minutes and 31 seconds, a figure appeared in the frame. Lee Hae-jin, walking home, backpack over her shoulder, completely unaware. Min-suk made a small sound, and Wu Bin's hand found his automatically. The Mercedes didn't slow down. Didn't swerve. Just kept coming until the moment of impact. Brutal, final, the woman's body thrown 15 feet by the force. The car's brake lights flashed once, twice, as if the driver was considering stopping. Then the vehicle accelerated, disappearing out of frame. Pause it, Wu Bin commanded, his voice deadly calm. Zoom in on the license plate. Young-sik did. The plate was partially visible, enough to read. Seoul 32 *** 4892. Run that plate. More typing. Then Young-sik's face appeared grim on the video call screen. Registered to Kong Tae-jun, silver Mercedes S-Class, purchased by Kong Industries in 2019. Currently listed as totaled. The family claimed it was in an accident and sold for parts 3 weeks after this incident. They destroyed the evidence, Min-suk whispered. They knew. There's more. Young-sik pulled up another camera angle from 2 blocks away, timestamp 2:31 a.m. This camera caught the same Mercedes stopped at a red light. Watch. The image quality was better here. Through the windshield, a young man was visible, clearly intoxicated, head lolling, hands gripping the steering wheel with white knuckles. Young-sik zoomed in further, enhanced the image using software that made it crystal clear. Kang Tae-jun. 5 years younger but unmistakably him. Eyes unfocused, lips moving like he was talking to himself or singing along to music only he could hear. Jesus, Ji-hoon breathed. He killed her and just kept driving. And Kim Jae-hyun? Woo Bin asked, his voice carefully controlled despite the rage building in his chest. The man who's been in prison for 5 years? Young-sik pulled up another file. I accessed the original case files. Kim Jae-hyun's truck was supposedly seen leaving the scene. But look at this, he displayed 2 more camera angles. This is Kim Jae-hyun's truck, caught on camera at a 7-Eleven 8 kilometers away at 2:25 a.m., where he bought cigarettes. Timestamp verified. And this, another angle, is the same truck returning to his apartment building at 2:47 a.m. There's no physical way he could have been at the accident scene during the relevant time window. Why wasn't this shown at trial? Min-suk asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Because Yoon & Associates made sure the investigating officers only pulled footage from cameras immediately adjacent to the crime scene. They argued that footage from further away wasn't relevant. The defense attorney, a court-appointed lawyer handling 6 cases simultaneously, didn't have the resources to investigate further. Kim Jae-hyun couldn't afford private representation. He told the truth, but nobody listened. Woo Bin stood, walking to the window, looking out at Seoul's glittering skyline. Somewhere out there, a man sat in prison for a crime he didn't commit. Somewhere out there, a daughter had grown up without her father. And somewhere out there, Kang Tae-jun slept peacefully in his expensive apartment, protected by family money and strategic lies. Copy everything, Woo Bin said quietly. Every frame of footage, every financial record, every piece of evidence. Make 3 separate backups. Encrypted. What are you going to do? Minji asked. Woo Bin turned back to face them, and his expression was the one his enemies saw right before their worlds collapsed. I'm going to give Chairman Kong a choice. He can sacrifice his son, or he can watch me destroy everything he's built. His company, his reputation, his legacy. All of it. And Kim Jae-hyun? Young-sik prompted. Him, I'm going to save. Woo Bin's voice gentled slightly. That man lost 5 years of his life, 5 years with his child, because a spoiled rich boy was too cowardly to face consequences. I'm going to give him his freedom back. His name back. His future back. Min-suk stood, crossing to Woo Bin, taking his hands. This is bigger than us now, isn't it? Yes. Woo Bin pressed their foreheads together. But it started with you. With what he did to you. And sometimes when you pull one thread, you discover the whole tapestry is rotten. When do we move? Tomorrow. I'm meeting with Chairman Kong tomorrow afternoon. By tomorrow night, either Tae-jun turns himself in, or I release everything to every media outlet in Korea. Either way, Woo Bin's voice hardened with absolute certainty. Justice is coming. The Kong Industries headquarters occupied 37 floors of prime real estate in Gangnam, all steel and glass reflecting Seoul's skyline back at itself. The building was designed to intimidate, vast marble lobby, security checkpoints, the implicit message that only the worthy made it past the ground floor. Woo Bin walked through it like he owned the place, which in a sense he did. Fear was its own form of ownership. Chairman Kang's executive suite took up the entire top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city, a visual reminder that from up here, people looked like ants, disposable and insignificant. The boardroom where they met could comfortably seat 20, though today it held only 4. Chairman Kong at the head of the table, his attorney Lee Sung-ho beside him, and Woo Bin with Dae-young flanking him like a well-dressed shadow. Chairman Kong was 63, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's cars. He had the face of a man who'd spent decades making difficult decisions and sleeping soundly afterward. When he looked at Woo Bin, there was no fear, just calculation and mild annoyance, like one might regard an unexpected business complication. Mr. Jean. The chairman's voice was cultured, controlled. Your request for this meeting was quite insistent. I assume you have good reason for demanding my personal attention. I do. Woo Bin settled into his chair with deliberate calm, Dae-young placing a tablet and a manila folder on the table in front of him. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice, Chairman Kong. I'll be direct. I respect your time too much to waste it. How refreshing. A slight smile touched the chairman's lips. Most people who walk through that door spend 20 minutes on pleasantries before getting to their point. Please be direct. Your son assaulted my husband 3 days ago at Lotte World Mall. Pushed him violently to the ground. My husband is 6 months pregnant. You can imagine my concern. Chairman Kang's expression didn't change, but his attorney shifted slightly. Mr. Jean, if you're here to threaten legal action. I'm not. Wu Bin's voice remained pleasant, conversational. Legal action would take years, cost both parties significant resources, and ultimately accomplish very little. I prefer more efficient solutions. He opened the manila folder, sliding a single photograph across the polished table. I'm here because when I investigated your son, as any concerned party would, I found something interesting. The photograph showed a silver Mercedes, timestamp visible, Taejun's face clear through the windshield. Chairman Kong picked it up, studied it with the same expression he might use reviewing quarterly reports. This is from 5 years ago, the chairman said slowly. October 15th, 2:30 in the morning. About 40 seconds before your son's vehicle struck and killed Lee Hai-jin, a 28-year-old mother of one, then fled the scene without stopping. Wu Bin pulled out more photographs, laying them out like cards in a poker game he'd already won. Traffic camera footage. Multiple angles. All showing your son driving recklessly while visibly intoxicated. All showing him leaving the scene after impact. The attorney leaned in, examining the photos with increasing alarm. Chairman Kang's face remained impassive, but something flickered in his eyes. Not surprise, Wu Bin noted. Recognition, maybe. Or confirmation of something he'd already suspected. This is, Chairman, if this is authentic. It's authentic. Wu Bin pulled out the tablet, queued up the video footage. I have 17 separate camera angles, all time-stamped, all verified. I have the maintenance logs showing your son's Mercedes was reported as totaled in an accident 3 weeks after this incident and sold for scrap. I have financial records showing Yoon and Associates received a substantial bonus payment shortly after Kim Jae-hyun's conviction. He paused, letting that name land. Kim Jae-hyun, the man currently serving 20 years for a crime he didn't commit. The man whose daughter grew up without a father, so yours could avoid consequences. Chairman Kong set down the photograph with careful precision. Those are serious accusations, Mr. Jean. They're not accusations. They're facts. Documented, verified, irrefutable facts. Wu Bin leaned back in his chair. Which brings us to why I'm here rather than at the nearest police station or media outlet. You want money. The chairman's tone suggested this was familiar territory. How much? I don't want your money, Chairman Kong. I have more than enough of my own. Wu Bin's voice hardened slightly. What I want is justice. For Kim Jae-hyun, who lost 5 years of his life. For Lee Hai-jin's child, who lost her mother. For my husband, who was thrown away by your family like trash. He leaned forward. And I'm giving you a choice in how that justice is delivered. The attorney started to speak, but Chairman Kong silenced him with a raised hand. Explain. In this folder, I have everything needed to exonerate Kim Jae-hyun and prove your son committed vehicular manslaughter, evidence tampering, and conspiracy. If I release this to the authorities and the media, and I have copies with multiple journalists on a dead man switch timer, Kong Industries will be destroyed. Not damaged. Destroyed. Wu Bin's words fell like hammer blows. Every contract you hold with the government will be terminated. Every partner will distance themselves. Your stock will collapse. The company your grandfather built, that you've spent your life expanding, will become synonymous with corruption and the obstruction of justice. You're threatening my entire legacy because my son pushed someone? The chairman's voice remained level, but his knuckles whitened on the armrest. No, I'm offering you a way to save your legacy by removing the liability that threatens it. Wu Bin slid a document across the table. This is a statement you'll sign, officially disowning Kong Tae-jun, removing him from all corporate positions, trust funds, inheritance. Along with this, you'll provide a formal statement to prosecutors admitting that your son was responsible for Lee Hai-jin's death and that you facilitated the cover-up. You'll cooperate fully with Kim Jae-hyun's exoneration. You want me to sacrifice my son. I want you to choose between your son and everything else. Your company, your reputation, your other family members who've done nothing wrong, the thousands of employees who depend on Kong Industries for their livelihoods. Wu Bin's voice was merciless. Your son killed someone and let an innocent man take the blame. That debt comes due eventually. The only question is who pays it. Chairman Kong stood abruptly, walking to the window, staring out at the city his empire helped shape. The silence stretched long enough that his attorney began to fidget. When the chairman finally spoke, his voice was almost distant. I knew, About the accident. Not immediately, but within a week. Taejun came to me, terrified, high out of his mind, confessing everything. He turned back to face them. I had a choice then too. I chose to protect him. To protect our family name. I told myself it was mercy, that he was young, that one mistake shouldn't ruin his entire life. And Kim Jae-hyun's mistake? Woo Bin asked coldly. His mistake was being poor and available when you needed a scapegoat. Yes. The simple admission carried no shame, just statement of fact. That's exactly what it was. And I made that choice knowing the cost. Knowing that somewhere, a man was losing his freedom for something he didn't do. Chairman Kong returned to the table, picked up the document, read it thoroughly. Tell me, Mr. Jean, do you have children? A daughter. Due in 3 months. Then perhaps you'll understand when I say, I loved my son. I still love my son. But love doesn't excuse what he did. And it doesn't obligate me to destroy everything else to protect him from consequences that are 5 years overdue. He looked at his attorney. Get me a pen. Chairman, wait, we can fight this. We can. We can what, Sung-ho? Suppress evidence again? Bribe more witnesses? How many more innocent people do we destroy to protect one guilty man? Chairman Kang's voice cracked slightly, the first sign of emotion breaking through. My grandfather built this company by hand. Survived the war, poverty, impossible odds. My father expanded it through innovation and integrity. I've grown it into what it is today. And I'm supposed to let it all burn because my son is a coward who can't face his mistakes. The attorney fell silent. Chairman Kong took the offered pen, laid the document flat on the table, and signed his name with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd signed thousands of contracts, though this one cost him more than all the others combined. When he finished, he set down the pen and spoke words that echoed in the boardroom like a funeral bell. As of this moment, I have no son named Kong Tae-jun. He has no claim to this family, this company, or this name. He will face justice for his actions as a private citizen, without the protection or resources of Kong Industries. He looked directly at Woo Bin. Is that sufficient? Woo Bin collected the signed document, examined it, nodded once. I'll deliver this to the prosecutor's office within the hour. Along with the evidence against your son. Kim Jae-hyun will be exonerated and compensated. Your company will survive, though I suspect you'll spend the next year in damage control. A small price. Chairman Kong turned back to the window. Tell me your husband. The one my son hurt. Is he recovering? He's fine. Our daughter is fine. Good. The chairman's reflection in the glass looked older somehow, diminished. Give him my apologies. Not that they mean anything. Not that they change what my family put him through. But, tell him anyway. Woo Bin stood, Dae-young mirroring him. Chairman Kong? For what it's worth, you made the right choice. Not the easy one. Not the kind one. But the right one. The right choice would have been 5 years ago, the chairman said quietly. This is just me finally having the courage to make it. As Woo Bin left the building, walking out into Seoul afternoon sunlight, Dae-young finally spoke. That was almost sad. Watching him choose his empire over his son. That's what empires do, Woo Bin replied, checking his phone for messages from Min-suk. They survive. At any cost. By any sacrifice. It's why building something worth more than an empire matters. He thought of Min-suk at home, of their daughter growing inside him, of the family they were creating through choice rather than blood. Chairman Kong built his grandfather's legacy. I'm building mine. The difference is, mine is made of people I'd burn the world to protect, not people I'd sacrifice to save my reputation. They drove home in silence, carrying the signed document that would free one man and doom another, proof that sometimes justice required the people who loved you most to let you fall. Before I tell you what happens next, subscribe to Starry-Eyed Lovers, and tell me where you're watching from. The sentencing hearing lasted 47 minutes. Judge Park Min-hee, known for her no-nonsense approach to vehicular crimes, showed no mercy to defendants who'd used wealth to escape consequences. When she read the verdict, 15 years for vehicular manslaughter, evidence tampering, and conspiracy, Tae-jun's knees buckled. His court-appointed attorney caught him before he hit the floor. 15 years, Tae-jun whispered, the words foreign in his mouth. That's 5,475 days. The judge's gavel fell like an execution. Court is adjourned. They led him away in handcuffs, past reporters shouting questions, past the empty gallery where his family should have been but wasn't, past Kim Jae-hyun's daughter weeping with relief that her father's name was finally cleared. Tae-jun looked back once, instinctively searching for his mother's face, his father's presence, some indication that he hadn't been completely abandoned. The courtroom was empty of everyone who'd ever claimed to love him. Seoul Detention Center became his new reality. 6 by 9 foot cell. Thin mattress. Metal toilet. The smell of industrial cleaner and desperation. His cellmate was a man serving time for fraud who talked constantly about his appeal, about getting out, about second chances. Taejun stopped listening after the first week. The other inmates knew who he was. The rich boy who'd killed someone and let a poor man take the fall. Prison had its own justice system, and Taejun learned quickly that his name meant nothing here except as a target. He kept his head down, spoke only when spoken to, and counted days that stretched like years. 5 months into his sentence, a guard appeared at his cell during afternoon recreation time. Kang Taejun. You have a visitor. Taejun's heart leapt before he could stop it. His mother. It had to be his mother. She'd finally come, finally forgiven him, finally. But when he shuffled into the visitation room in his prison uniform and cheap plastic sandals, hands cuffed in front of him, the man waiting on the other side of the plexiglass partition was Jin Woo-bin. Taejun froze. The guard nudged him forward into the chair, and Taejun sat mechanically, picking up the phone receiver with shaking hands. Across from him, Woo-bin looked exactly as he had that night at the mall. Immaculate suit, perfect composure, eyes like dark water, hiding depths that could drown you. Mr. Kong. Woo-bin's voice through the phone was conversational, almost pleasant. Thank you for seeing me. I didn't know I had a choice. Taejun's voice came out hoarse from disuse. He rarely spoke anymore except to answer roll call. You always have a choice. You just rarely make good ones. Woo-bin settled back in his chair with the ease of someone who knew he controlled this conversation absolutely. How are you adjusting to your new accommodations? Why are you here? Taejun couldn't play games, couldn't engage in small talk. Did you come to gloat? To see me like this? Congratulations, you won. You destroyed me. You destroyed everything. I didn't destroy you, Taejun. You destroyed yourself 5 years ago when you got behind the wheel high on cocaine and killed an innocent woman. I simply made sure you finally faced consequences. Woo-bin's expression didn't change. But no, I'm not here to gloat. I'm here to deliver a message. Something in Taejun's chest tightened. From Min-suk. The name felt dangerous in his mouth, forbidden. He hadn't let himself think about Min-suk in months, had forced himself not to remember soft skin and quiet laughter, and the way Min-suk used to look at him like he hung the stars. Thinking about Min-suk meant thinking about what he'd thrown away, what he'd destroyed, and that way lay madness in a 6 by 9 cell. Yes. Woo-bin studied him with clinical interest. You've thought about him. In here, alone with nothing but time. Every day. The admission escaped before Taejun could stop it. Does he hate me? Tell me the truth. Does he wish I was dead? Hate would be easier for you. Woo-bin's voice carried a strange gentleness, the kind a doctor might use before delivering a terminal diagnosis. Hate means you still matter enough to feel strongly about. Hate means you occupy space in his emotional landscape. But that's not what he feels. Then what? Taejun leaned forward, desperate. What does he feel? Nothing. He feels nothing when he thinks about you, which is rarely. Woo-bin delivered each word with surgical precision. You've become a story he tells about his past. A cautionary tale about trusting the wrong people. You're not his present. You're barely even his history. You're just someone who happened to him once. The words landed like physical blows. Somehow, being nothing hurt worse than being hated. But, Woo-bin continued, he did ask me to tell you something. Before our daughter was born, when he was finding peace with everything that happened. He wanted you to know, he paused, making sure Taejun was listening. He forgives you. Taejun's breath stopped. What? He forgives you. Not because you deserve it. Not because what you did was acceptable. Not because he's forgotten or because time has healed all wounds. Woo-bin's eyes were merciless in their clarity. He forgives you because holding on to anger was poisoning him. Because our daughter deserves to be born into a home without that kind of toxicity. Because forgiveness isn't about you, it's about his freedom. I don't understand. I know you don't. That's what makes this perfect. Woo-bin leaned closer to the plexiglass. You're going to spend the next 14.5 years in here, Taejun, 5,293 more days. And every single one of those days, you're going to remember that Min-suk forgave you. That he released you from his heart and moved on. That he's happy now, building a family, living a life that has nothing to do with you. Taejun felt something crack inside his chest. Why would he tell me that? Why would you come here to? Because hate would let you believe you still affected him. Hate would give you power. But forgiveness. Woo-bin's smile was sharp as broken glass. Forgiveness means he's free. And you're not. Forgiveness means he gets to be happy while you rot in here, knowing you lost something you can never get back. Not because he won't take you back, but because he doesn't want you back. He doesn't want anything from you except your absence from his life. That's cruel. The words came out broken. That's justice. Wu Bin stood, preparing to leave. He wanted you to know that he's not your victim anymore. He's not defined by what you did to him. He's just happy. Genuinely, completely happy with someone who would burn the world down to protect him. And you get to spend the next 15 years knowing that. Wait. Taejun pressed his palm against the plexiglass. Please. Did he have the baby? Is it? Her name is Hannah. She's beautiful. She has Minsuk's eyes and his resilience. She'll grow up knowing she's loved, protected, valued. Everything you never made Minsuk feel. Wu Bin picked up his briefcase. Goodbye, Taejun. This is the last time we'll speak. Minsuk wanted closure, and now he has it. You don't get to occupy any more of his time or thoughts. The guard was already coming to return Taejun to his cell. As Wu Bin walked away, Taejun realized with horrifying clarity what had just happened. He'd been released, set free from Minsuk's hatred, from any connection that might have sustained him through these years. He'd been forgiven, which meant he no longer mattered. And somehow, that was the cruelest punishment of all, being granted absolution by someone who no longer cared enough to withhold it. The paperwork for Kim Jae-hyun's release took 3 hours to process. 3 hours that felt obscene when measured against the 5 years he'd already lost. Wu Bin's legal team, led by attorney Kwon Mi-young, had filed the emergency motion for exoneration at 9 that morning, armed with traffic camera footage that proved definitively what everyone should have known from the start. Kim Jae-hyun was innocent. By noon, the prosecutor's office had no choice but to concede. By 2, a judge had signed the release order. By 3:15, Jae-hyun stood in the prison discharge area wearing the same clothes he'd been arrested in 5 years prior. Jeans that no longer fit his thinner frame, a button-down shirt that smelled like storage, shoes that felt foreign on feet accustomed to prison-issue sandals. Sign here, here, and here. The processing officer's voice was bored, indifferent to the magnitude of what was happening. Your personal effects are in this bag. You'll receive information about compensation procedures in the mail. Any questions? Jae-hyun stared at the forms, at his own name printed in black ink, at the word exonerated stamped in red across the top. His hands shook so badly he could barely hold the pen. Is this real? His voice came out raspy. This isn't. They're not going to change their minds. You're free to go, Mr. Kim. The officer pushed the clipboard closer. Just sign. Free. The word felt like a foreign language, something Jae-hyun had forgotten how to speak. He signed his name 3 times, muscle memory from 5 years of signing prison forms taking over when his brain couldn't process what was happening. The final door opened, and sunlight hit him like a physical force. Jae-hyun stood frozen on the threshold, one hand raised to shield his eyes, breathing air that didn't taste like recycled desperation. The sky was impossibly blue. The sounds of traffic, of people talking, of normal life happening, it overwhelmed him. He'd forgotten there was a world out here that kept turning while his stopped. Mr. Kim. A woman in an expensive suit approached, hand extended. I'm Kwon Mi-young with Jean Legal Services. Mr. Jean sent me to facilitate your release and help with your transition. There's a car waiting. Jean. You mean? Jean Wu Bin. Jae-hyun's voice cracked on the name. He knew who Wu Bin was. Everyone in Seoul knew who he was. Why would he? I don't understand. Why would he help me? Because you deserved help 5 years ago and didn't get it. Mi-young's expression was kind. Because the man who put you here needs to face consequences. And because, she gestured to the black sedan idling at the curb, there are people waiting to see you. The car door opened, and Jae-hyun's breath stopped entirely. Min-suk emerged first, moving carefully with the deliberate grace of someone 8 months pregnant. Behind him, Wu Bin appeared, one hand protectively at Min-suk's lower back. They looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine. Min-suk glowing with that particular beauty pregnancy brought, Wu Bin radiating quiet power in his tailored suit. Mr. Kim. Min-suk approached slowly, giving Jae-hyun space to process. My name is Lee Min-suk. This is my husband, Wu Bin. We're the reason you're standing here right now. Jae-hyun's legs felt weak. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Min-suk's voice was gentle. We just wanted to make sure you knew what happened to you was wrong. Unconscionably wrong. And while we can't give you back those 5 years, we can make sure the person responsible faces justice. Kang Tae-jun. The name tasted like acid. He's the one who actually... Yes. He's been sentenced to 15 years. Wu Bin spoke for the first time. The evidence that freed you also convicted him. Your name has been fully cleared. The compensation process will begin immediately, though no amount of money can truly make this right. Jae-hyun felt tears burning his eyes, fought them back, failed. My daughter. Minna. Where is she? I need to. She's safe, Myung assured him quickly. She's been staying with your mother. They're both at Hanam Senior Living Center. That's where we're taking you now, if you're ready. My mother. Jaehyun's voice broke completely. She's alive? She's okay? They told me she had a stroke 2 years ago, that she was in a facility, but I couldn't afford. She's been receiving excellent care, Min-suk said softly. All expenses covered. Physical therapy, medication, everything she needs. She's waiting for you. Jaehyun looked between them, this pregnant Omega and his dangerous husband. These strangers who'd saved him from a nightmare he'd stopped believing he'd ever wake from. Why? Why would you do this for me? Because someone did something similar for me once, Min-suk said, his hand resting on his belly. When I had nothing and no one, someone chose to help me. To see me as worth saving. This is me paying that forward. The drive to Hanam took 20 minutes that felt like 20 seconds. Jaehyun sat in the back seat, staring out the window at a Seoul that had changed and stayed the same. New buildings, familiar streets, a life that had continued without him. Beside him, Min-suk pointed out landmarks, filled the silence with gentle conversation, never demanding responses Jaehyun couldn't give. Hanam Senior Living Center was nothing like the state-run facilities Jaehyun had imagined his mother warehoused in. It was beautiful, gardens, modern architecture, staff who greeted them warmly. Myung handled the check-in while Woo-bin and Min-suk guided Jaehyun to the residential wing. She's in the sunroom, a nurse said, smiling. She's been so excited all morning. We told her you were coming. The sunroom overlooked the gardens, all windows and light and peace. And there in a comfortable chair with a book in her lap, was his mother. She looked older. 5 years older, yes, but also aged by worry and grief. Her hair had gone completely white. Her hands trembled slightly from the stroke's lingering effects. But when she looked up and saw him standing in the doorway, her face transformed. Jaehyun. His name was a prayer, a sob, a benediction. He crossed the room in 3 strides, falling to his knees in front of her chair, and she pulled him into her arms the way she'd done when he was small, when the world was too big and scary, when only her embrace could make things right. I'm sorry, Jaehyun choked out. I'm so sorry. I couldn't protect you. I couldn't take care of you. I tried to tell them I was innocent, but no one would listen, and you were alone, and Minna was alone, and... Shivsha, my son. My precious son. Her fingers combed through his hair, the same gesture from childhood. You're here now. You're free. That's all that matters. From the doorway, Min-suk watched with tears streaming freely down his face, Woo-bin's arm around his shoulders. This was what justice looked like when it healed instead of just punished. This was restoration, not just retribution. A family torn apart by lies and wealth and cruelty, now being stitched back together by truth. Thank you, Jaehyun's mother called out to them, looking over her son's shoulder. Thank you for bringing him back to me. I prayed every day. You don't have to thank us, Min-suk said through his tears. We just did what should have been done 5 years ago. Later, after they'd left Jaehyun to private time with his mother, after promises to help him reunite with his daughter the next day, after assurances that he'd have employment and housing and support for as long as he needed it, Min-suk and Woo-bin sat in their car in comfortable silence. I needed to see that, Min-suk said finally, his hand on his belly where their daughter kicked gently. I needed to know that what you did, wasn't just about revenge or punishment. It was about making things right. You're the one who insisted we help him, who made sure his mother was cared for even before he was released. Woo-bin brought Min-suk's hand to his lips. That's all you, my love. Your compassion. Your belief that broken things can be fixed. We fixed what we could, Min-suk corrected gently. We can't give him back those 5 years. We can't undo that trauma. But we could give him his freedom and his family. That has to be enough. It's more than enough, Woo-bin said. It's everything. And as they drove home through Seoul's evening traffic, Min-suk understood with perfect clarity. Justice without mercy was just cruelty by another name. But justice with compassion, that could heal wounds, restore families, and prove that even in the darkest moments, there was still hope for light. Hannah Jean was born at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in late spring, emerging into the world with furious lungs and her father's determined expression. She weighed 3.2 kilograms, had a full head of dark hair, and when the nurse placed her on Min-suk's chest, still vernix-covered and screaming, she immediately stopped crying and looked directly at him with eyes that seemed far too aware for someone only seconds old. Hello, little one, Min-suk whispered, his own tears falling into her hair. We've been waiting for you. Woo-bin stood beside them, one hand on Min-suk's shoulder, the other gently touching his daughter's tiny fist. When she wrapped her fingers around his thumb with surprising strength, something in his expression cracked open. Pure, unguarded love that he usually kept carefully hidden behind composure and control. "She's perfect," Wu Bin said, voice rough with emotion. "You're both perfect." Dr. Choi smiled from where she was finishing the delivery. "Congratulations. You have a very healthy, very opinionated daughter." That first night, Min Suk didn't sleep. He just held Hannah, watching the rise and fall of her chest, counting her fingers and toes repeatedly, marveling that something so precious and whole had come from such a complicated journey. Wu Bin dozed in the chair beside the hospital bed, but even in sleep his hand remained stretched out, touching Min Suk's ankle, maintaining connection, maintaining protection. This, Min Suk thought, was what happiness felt like. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of something worth all the pain that came before. 3 months later, Seoul's Four Seasons Hotel ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and Seoul's most influential citizens. The charity gala had drawn politicians, business leaders, celebrities, and activists, all gathering for the official opening of New Beginnings Sanctuary. The venue buzzed with conversation and champagne, with designer gowns and carefully maintained social hierarchies. Min Suk stood backstage, Hannah sleeping peacefully in a silk sling against his chest, and tried to remember how to breathe. "You don't have to do this," Wu Bin said quietly, adjusting Min Suk's tie with gentle precision. "I can give the speech. Or we can have someone else." "No." Min Suk's voice was steadier than he felt. "This is my story. Our story. It needs to come from me. Then I'll be right there." Wu Bin pressed a kiss to Min Suk's temple, careful not to disturb Hannah. "Always." The event coordinator appeared, headset crackling. "Mr. Lee? We're ready for you." The walk to the podium felt both endless and instantaneous. The crowd quieted as Min Suk stepped into the spotlight, 300 pairs of eyes turning to assess him. The pregnant Omega from the viral mall incident, now holding a baby, now married to Seoul's most feared underground kingpin, now somehow standing before them asking for their support. Min Suk gripped the podium with one hand, the other cradling Hannah's warm weight against him, and began to speak. "Good evening. My name is Lee Min Suk, and this," he looked down at his sleeping daughter, "is Hannah. She's 3 months old, completely unbothered by this very fancy party, and she's the reason I'm standing here tonight." A ripple of gentle laughter moved through the crowd. Min Suk felt his shoulders relax slightly. "A year ago, I was standing in a different place. In a storm. Bleeding. Alone. I'd just been thrown out of a house that would never be my home by people who saw me as disposable. I was losing a child I desperately wanted. I was losing hope that life could be anything other than cruel." His voice remained steady, even as the memories threatened to crack it. "And then someone stopped. In the middle of that storm, someone saw me as worth saving." In the front row, Wu Bin watched with an expression that somehow combined fierce pride and tender devotion. Beside him, Dr. Choi dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. "I learned something that night that I want to share with you all. I learned that rock bottom isn't where you break, it's where you build your foundation. Every terrible thing that happened to me, every moment I thought would destroy me, became the bedrock for who I am now. For this family I've built. For this sanctuary we're opening tonight." Min Suk looked up from his notes, making eye contact with faces throughout the crowd. New Beginnings Sanctuary exists because no one should have to stand in that storm alone. Because Omegas in this country are still fighting for basic dignity, basic rights, basic safety. Because I had someone catch me when I fell, and now it's my turn to catch others. He paused as Hannah stirred slightly, her tiny fist emerging from the sling to wave aimlessly before settling again. The gesture drew soft sounds of appreciation from the audience. This sanctuary will provide housing, medical care, legal aid, and job training for marginalized Omegas who've been told they don't matter, who've been discarded by families, by partners, by a society that still sees them as less than. We'll tell them a different story. We'll show them that terrible things don't stay terrible if you transform them into something beautiful. Movement at the back of the ballroom caught his attention. Kim Jae-hyun in the security manager uniform they'd designed together, standing proud and professional, having found purpose in protecting others the way he couldn't protect himself 5 years ago. Their eyes met across the distance, and Jae-hyun nodded once, understanding passing between two men who'd both rebuilt themselves from ruins. "So tonight, I'm asking for your support. Your donations, yes, but also your belief that people deserve second chances. That one mistake, one terrible circumstance, one moment of being thrown away doesn't define someone forever." Min Suk's voice strengthened with conviction. "Because I was thrown away. And I survived. And now I'm standing here telling you, we can build a world where that doesn't happen anymore. where someone is always there to catch you, where new beginnings are possible for everyone, not just the privileged. The applause started slowly, then built to something powerful, sustained. Min-suk stepped back from the podium, overwhelmed, and Woo Bin was there immediately. One hand settling protectively at the small of Min-suk's back, guiding him off stage, sheltering him from the crowd's intensity. "You were magnificent," Woo Bin murmured against his ear. "Absolutely magnificent." Later, after the formal presentations ended and the gala shifted to mingling and networking, they stood together on the hotel's terrace overlooking Seoul's nighttime skyline. Hannah had woken and was nursing contentedly, unconcerned with the party happening inside. The city stretched out before them. Millions of lights, millions of lives, millions of stories being written in real time. "Do you think it'll work?" Min-suk asked quietly. "The sanctuary. Can we actually make a difference?" "You already have." Woo Bin's arm tightened around his waist. "That man in there, the one who donated 500 million won? He has an Omega nephew his family disowned. Your speech made him cry. Made him realize what he'd done. That's one life changed. One family potentially reconciled. Multiply that by everyone in that ballroom, by everyone who'll hear about this, by every Omega who'll walk through our doors. We can't save everyone. No, but we can save someone. And someone is always worth it." Woo Bin pressed a kiss to the top of Hannah's head, then to Min-suk's temple. "You've built something extraordinary from pain. You've taken the worst thing that ever happened to you and transformed it into hope for others. That's not just making a difference, Min-suk. That's changing the world." Inside the ballroom, the gala continued. Donations pledged, connections made, the machinery of change slowly beginning to turn. Kim Jae-hyun coordinated security with quiet competence, having found his place in this new story. Dr. Choi networked with potential medical partners, already planning the sanctuary's health services. Dae-young worked the room with surprising charm, securing corporate sponsorships. But out here, on this terrace under Seoul's stars, Min-suk held his daughter and leaned into his husband's solid presence and understood. This was the real victory. Not revenge against Tae-jun, not justice for past wrongs, though those mattered. The real victory was this: building a family, building a future, building something so full of love and purpose that the darkness couldn't touch it. "Thank you," Min-suk said softly. "For what?" "For stopping that night. For seeing me. For choosing us every single day since." "Min-suk." Woo Bin turned him gently, cupping his face with both hands, mindful of Hannah between them. "You're not something I chose once. You're something I choose every moment. Every breath. You and Hannah, you're my entire world. My redemption. My purpose. Everything I am belongs to you." They kissed over their daughter's head, gentle and sure, a promise renewed. When they pulled apart, Min-suk saw his own reflection in the terrace windows. No longer the broken boy thrown into a storm, but a man who'd survived, who'd rebuilt, who transformed his pain into purpose. "Ready to go back in?" Woo Bin asked. "Ready." Min-suk shifted Hannah in his arms, her weight familiar and perfect. "Let's go change the world." And together, this family built from ruins, this love forged in darkness, this hope born from despair, they walked back into the light. The end.